Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am delighted to be here with Nick Bonfiglio, the CEO of Syncari. Hi, Nick. Thank you for joining us. And wondering if you could start with a brief introduction of yourself and your background, a little bit about Syncari.
Hey, Scott, it's great to see you again. And yeah, happy to do that. So, Nick Bonfilio, Scott mentioned, I'm CEO of Syncari. And I guess most recently, the best way to think of my background is I spent the last 20 years in SaaS and working on products and businesses that can fundamentally change how companies really grow and interact with their customers. That's really what I've been focused on for a long time. And I led the product and engineering teams at Marketo. And you could say that data management as a result of that and data organization became something that not only fascinated me, but it was also a passion of mine that I really liked. And so it's obviously no surprise that Syncari, our focus is mostly around data and transforming how go-to-market and data teams leverage their customer data in order to be more strategic in the marketplace. So in a nutshell, that's a quick intro to Syncari. I really fundamentally believe that we want to make data not just shareable and accessible. That goes without saying, but truly becoming strategic for an organization for driving growth and enhancing decision making. That's really what we're trying to get done here, and to push the boundaries of the way I like to think of it is our unified data sets will push the boundaries of AI, machine learning, and just plain old human operations that still are going to be with us for some time. I got a hunch. So
Excellent. With this, boy, there's so much alignment here with the topics we're talking about today. With this rapid evolution of the data landscape, how do you see the dynamics influencing the way companies should approach data integration and automation?
oh, interesting. I guess to me, and Scott, hopefully people aren't going to roll their eyes, but it seems like data is more confused than it normally is, or the whole data landscape feels that way over the last few years. And one of the biggest evolutions that I've seen that affected this is that data teams at this point have a lot fewer resources to keep reinventing the same solutions over and over, thinking that it's differentiated in a company when it's all the same stuff, right? So what we see happening more and more is that the buy versus build conversation is becoming a way more of an adopted strategy in a lot of organizations that don't have the cash that they used to have to spend on these things. But we're also seeing that buying point solutions and composing them in-house is also still not really working very well because it creates this huge amounts of what I would call glue code that also is untenable, also needs to be maintained, and it creates gaps when people leave your business. So we fundamentally believe that data is going to move more towards integrated platforms like Syncari, like others that are in the marketplace today, that allow teams of all sizes to implement projects faster, cheaper, with better support and less maintenance down the line. This is what our customers do every day inside of Syncari.
In your view, are there some widespread misunderstandings regarding data warehouses and how they should be integrated into the broader data ecosystem?
Look, with data warehouses are going to be with us for some time, but I think the biggest misconception, especially in go-to-market teams, Scott, and marketing and the whole entire go-to-market piece of this, is that implementing a data warehouse doesn't solve your data problems. And there's this misconception that, I just need a data warehouse and I'll just put everything in there and all my data problems go away. And that's so far from what really goes on, because the reality is that you need to be able to continuously unify this data across the entire stack in order so that your end systems are reflective of the changes that may be happening upstream or downstream of your organization, but also that the data warehouse is also representative of those changes that are happening across the business. So we think of it as like the data warehouse isn't the be all end all. So the unification of master records in the data warehouse is important. Like one of the things we run into, Scott, and this is for the marketers out there, is that for a long time, we viewed marketing data as all of the go-to-market data, right? And the reality is today, like the entire customer journey spans from ads to billings, right? Essentially. And so that entire journey needs to be captured and managed, and you need to be able to interact with the customer at each stage of those journey and do the right things at those stages of the journey. So this is, and to me, that data warehouses aren't as important, but it just means that interoperability of your go-to-market stack is way more important than the interoperability of the tech that's included in your stack, if that makes sense, especially when it comes to data for analytics and metrics. And we get so caught up in ETLs, reverse ETLs, and all this crazy jargon that we're forgetting that like the whole point of this was to make better decisions and drive better business outcomes and grow my business. And that's where I think the data warehouse is the biggest misconception, is that it's the be all end all, right?
Yeah, no, it's been quite a alphabet soup of different data technologies that the marketers have found themselves. Oh, this will be the shining star. I'd love, yeah, just your perspective on Syncari's foundations. When we talked earlier, there were concepts from master data management. There's certain concepts from customer data platforms, but you've synthesized this into your own view of, yeah, the best way to support marketers with data automation. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, we coined this term data automation. A lot more people are using it today, but I wrote the initial book on data automation for this go-to-market practice. But what we saw is we borrowed. So when we built the platform, there was things we saw in the marketplace that were correct, right? So for example, MDM, we borrowed some stuff on the right track for data unification. The problem is that it fell short because the data unification was happening in some head end, and it was not unified back to the sources that are actually touching and creating this data. So we wanted to borrow that MDM piece, but also improve upon it with our multi-directional sync engine that we have patented in the market. And what Syncari does is provide continuous data unification, not just in the head end MDM system, but across all the connected systems that create and touch that data, which is very different than what everyone else is doing. So one way to think about Syncari is if you were to think about an MDM 2.0, what would it look like?
Mm-hmm.
And there probably, hopefully, will be a picture of Syncari there at some point in the future, because that's really what it looks like. Now, on the CDP side, we also borrowed some learnings from there. Like CDP does identity resolution, or at that top layer of who is Nick and who is Scott. And that's all good. And it's great for the top of funnel identity metrics that you may want to manage, or identity stuff you want to do at the top of the funnel. So we borrowed that capability and we applied essentially any entity resolution into the platform. So now any entity in your unified data model can be unified into one canonical wide record of what that is. If it's opportunities, invoices, identities, accounts, you name it, whatever runs your business, you can create. As a matter of fact, we unified Jira, Zendesk, and Salesforce tickets together, right? So that's another object that you want to unify that data for. And so borrowing some of that from CDP and applying it to the entire data model, and the unification that we get out of MDM as MDM 2.0 and Syncari is what we've done. It's a little different with what we coined as data automation in the marketplace.
Given this evolution in the tech landscape, do the traditional categories of iPaaS, MDM, CDP, do they still hold relevance, or is there like a shift towards a more integrated model like you're talking about that is really more about bridging those boundaries?
I'm really glad you asked that question. I fundamentally believe that there will be massive consolidation in these areas, and we'll start to see, because these categories are going to start increasingly overlap with each other. So iPaaS is going to do more workflow, CDPs are going to start to do more iPaaS. Anyway, the whole thing is just going to get so overlappish that there's going to be consolidation, and people are going to go, I just need to be able to do certain things. And so our belief is that composability of the data technology is going to give way to the fact that people really want to achieve composability of their go-to-market stack. That means that people don't want to talk about, really, they don't want to talk about ETLs, reverse ETLs, iPaaS, transformations, all the things that we talk about at the tech jargon level. What they want to do is say, hey, I need this data to look like this when it goes over to this system, and I need it to look like this when it goes over to that system, and I need to be able to run these automations across it, or I need to make sure that the data is clean, canonical, enriched, merged, deduped. All the things that the business users care about that their system does is what we went after, as opposed to talking about those things. So the ability to shrink and grow the go-to-market capabilities of today, be it this CRM, tomorrow be it that CRM. We all know that marketing technologies come and go. And so I want to be able to try this new technology, but without affecting everything else. How do I do that? So that ability to give you interoperability across these things is what we think is going to happen in these data platforms. It's going to become less about the tech, more about what the business needs to grow, and more about how do I get interoperability across my go-to-market engine, not the data side. Some of that data side will apply to 5% of the businesses going forward, but eventually business users will want to do this on their own. Just back in the think about marketing automation, where we came from. Were there email cannons back then? Absolutely. Were there landing page editors back then in WordPress? Absolutely. Were there all these a MySQL database with all your leads in it? Absolutely. What did we do? We put it all together, made it easy for the marketer to consume and run the plays that you want to run out of a digital marketing team. That's what we did. And so we think the same things are happening in data, where we're focused on the individual tech pieces as opposed to, hey, we're just trying to get our data to work for our business and tell us where things are going and where we want to go. And that's really what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not a professional analyst, but as an armchair analyst, I would say this is generally the failure of the analyst community is we tend to prefer these things of, oh, there's this bucket and there's that bucket because, all right, this is how we identify who's in which one. But yeah, you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, like customers have a set of challenges they're trying to solve. They don't care about the categories, they care about the solution. And so I'm wondering, yeah, maybe even then shifting away from questions about categories, could you tell us a little bit about some of the real world problems that you see customers facing with their data today, and how does Syncari aim to solve them?
I think one of the biggest things that we see, Scott, and a lot of our customers is that the organizational responsibility being siloed continues to, I think, in my opinion, cause the data projects to fail. And so that's because, and that's not to say that it was intentional, it's just that you need to be able to prioritize these data projects from the standpoint of the entire organization. There needs to be executive ownership and executive responsibility for, look, I'm trying to fix the entire customer journey, whatever that may be. If you're manufacturing, it could be all the way into the yields that you're getting out of your fab houses. If it's SaaS, it's like what's going on in customer success land. It's being able to understand the entire customer journey, somebody owning that and owning the data and the processes that go all the way through that journey. And in the past, even us in marketing, we thought that marketing automation systems were orchestrating and curating the entire customer journey. Now, we all know now that's not true, and it was a fallacy to begin with. But if you want to orchestrate the entire customer journey, this thing goes from ads all the way to billings, or all the way into manufacturing, or all the way into yields, or RMAs, or whatever it may be for your business. So being able to do the entire journey and map all the systems that do that together is what we think is the problems we see happening in companies where no one really owns doing that. And so, but they want to do it. And so how do you find the person in the company that really owns this is difficult. So we find pockets of marketing is trying to solve these problems. And so stay out of those other problems because these are marketing problems, or sales is trying to solve these problems, or finance is trying to solve these problems. And there needs to be something that cuts across that. And I think RevOps is, in my mind, still the thing that we want to see happen, that an organization becomes that thing, because we were so close before 2023 happened to getting RevOps to be the seat at the table that can orchestrate that data end to end, and needed the tools like a Syncari to go do something like that. So our approach is really, hey, how do we find the person that's trying to solve this? How do we tell them that it's about snapping in all your systems and being able to orchestrate the entire journey and unify all the data across your business so you know what's going on in every layer of your organization, and you can report on that to your board, to your e-staff, to your teams, to the sales organization, to the sales leader trying to figure out where next quarter's forecast is going, all of that stuff that we all think about every day.
Yeah, I'd love to tug a little bit here on the RevOps question, because yeah, definitely there was this incredible acceleration, and I agree with you. I think the vision for RevOps is incredibly compelling because it's the organizational equivalent of, yeah, how do we see this end-to-end customer journey? What do you think are some of the things that are the challenges RevOps needs to still overcome to really get that adoption, to be able to get that buy-in across more organizations?
So the thing that we saw that when RevOps succeeded the most was when the CEO or someone really, it depends on the size of the org, but CEO or CFO was owning the responsibility of making that happen. And so when that was the case, we saw RevOps working in a lot of companies. And what we all know now is that RevOps leaders come in different shapes and sizes, and that it is a very complex role, because not only are you having to be astute politically about how to drive other organizations that don't report directly to you, but you really do need the position power in order to drive the decision or escalate the driving of that decision, if that makes sense. And so we saw where a lot of power was revoked from certain RevOps folks, which was a shame, because really they were all trying to do the right thing, which is like, how do we better manage the business across all these different teams? How do we make the right investments, et cetera, and so forth? And how do we manage our customers better? How do we provide the best customer experience we can for our customers? But it got jammed up in politics and who owns what piece of the data and what org, and you can't log into my system and the stuff like that we kept running into. I think that all of that will eventually give way too, because we saw it happen back in the day before ERP became ERP. So it's just a matter of time before the RevOps function is viewed like the CF in a company from that perspective. And when that happens, you will see a lot of this stuff come to fruition more clearly, I think.
As marketers are working through that at the moment, so I picture RevOps as, being primarily rooted in all these different customer-facing business functions. We still see in a lot of organizations, they also have significant IT teams. There's this whole data team.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on, how marketers should be thinking about working with that side of the house and how that relates to this evolving RevOps vision?
Yeah, without upsetting a lot of the data folks that are out there, data team is not to take the latest director set and spend time on trying to solve the technical aspects of a problem. It's really what's missing is, if you think about it, you have a product manager and you have a product marketer when you're building a product, right? Your product manager is understanding the bits and bytes and trying to get all that into engineering land and make sure that engineering understands what we're building. And so there's and product marketers going like, why do I tell the story to the market that solves their problem from a perspective of an ICP or whatever's going on? And what I think we have right now is like the product manager are trying to do product marketing, if for lack of a better way of thinking about it. And we don't have any product marketing going on, which is like, what is the solution that's going to help drive a better outcome in these businesses is missing a little bit. And that's what we thought RevOps was going to become. Whereas we've got, we need ETL, reverse ETL, data warehouse, and some data transformations and blah, 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 and all these things that, is that what we need, to solve this business problem? So that's what we see happening, Scott. And so I guess the question is, they need to interact in the same way that if you're building a product, there's a product marketing function that's giving you business requirements for the market. You've got a product manager that's trying to digest that into, what does that mean for my product? And then an implementation team that's implementing that for the business users that are in the company, if that makes sense. It's a little bit flipped right now, where it's the product managers are wagging the dog or something like that.
Makes sense. All right, boy, so many questions I'd love to ask you here, but I feel like the one I've failed to ask you is, of course, the topic of the year, right? How do you think developments in AI are likely to affect the use of data and marketing over these next 12 months?
Yeah, this is the majority of AI is impacted by the cleanliness of your data, right? So let's just start there. If you have an AI model that's being fed junk, you're going to get junk results out of that model. So we spend a lot of time in the model creation, but we don't spend time making sure that data is clean, or is the right data for extrapolating the next best on this, or whatever. What's the propensity of this opportunity to close, or things like that. And so as the data is also malleable and changing all the time, you can't just do a one-time cleanup operation for your data and expect that everything's going to be hunky-dory from that point on. Your model will work great for that data set that you just cleaned up. But the reality is business data doesn't work that way. It's ever changing. It's always changing. So how do you get to where there's continually clean processed data that's feeding the right data into your models and data sets into your models, so that you can predict propensity, all these different things that we want to do with clean data and accurate data? Because the accuracy of your model is going to be highly dependent on the data that we have. So we spend a lot of time in trying to get people to understand that, look, if you're going to go down the AI road, or you want to predict the likelihood of an event happening based on your data, you need to make sure that data is not only clean one time, but it's continuously clean and continuously in the shape that your model expects it to be in order to have the most accurate AI. So I think what we're seeing is marketers are obviously at Marketo, we built some things around AI, machine learning at Marketo to predict next best offer. And the best of our models, with all the data that was changing all the time in Marketo or whatever, and probably also the same in HubSpot, you got to maybe 75 to 80% accuracy. And so that's where we were. And what we really want to get to is like, hey, can I feed this model the best, cleanest data to predict an outcome at 95, statistically significant outcome in out of this model? And that's not going to come from anything other than people understanding their data model, getting it clean, getting it fed into those data models, and predicting the right events, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales prediction, whether it's how many tickets is this customer going to open over the next 3 months, whatever that is, that sort of being able to predict those things is important.
No, I think it's a great point. I've said now multiple times that there's been almost too much focus on the technology of the tech stack and not enough about the actual data. That's what makes all the magic work with this technology.
Yeah, we learned that at HubSpot and Marketo, right? Like we literally could not do the things that we wanted to do for our customers because their data shapes and cleanliness was all over the map, right?
Data quality, it matters.
The models wouldn't work across every customer, right?
So with all the continuous evolution in this space, what changes do you think are going to be required in the skill sets for marketing professionals, and how should they prepare for that future?
Yeah, if you think of what's going on in marketing today, the things we used to don't work right now, and what new things need to happen and emerge. And so if you think about when we transition from traditional marketing into digital marketing, the heads of marketing in those days were not savvy on digital marketing, right? And this is where the rise of marketing ops came in as part of your digital marketing strategy to be able to run these digital marketing technical campaigns. We all talk about data ops, but data ops at the moment is being thought about as the guys that understand the technology. Let's go have them do this. And it's what I think we need to do is get it to where data becomes part of, in marketing especially, becomes part of the marketing ops person's role to understand where the data is, where it's going, where it's coming from, how do I clean it? But it needs to be done in context of the entire journey. So I'll say that again, and because marketers, we noticed this at Marketo. I don't know if you noticed this at HubSpot, but people were running campaigns in Marketo to clean up their data all the time. Oh, change MR to capital MR. And they'd have 10 million leads. And so they're like, oh, I'm going to do this campaign and touch 10 million records. And they do it again for some other field. And they go, God, Marketo's really slow. You just touched 20 million records. We go, like, what do you? So it's understanding sort of the technical implications of that in order to run the right business strategy that they may want to run, right? So that's really what it comes down to.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Awesome. This has been fantastic. Any last parting advice for our audience? Magic wand. Why not?
I equate data evolution right now as to what's happening, and buckle up because it's the same as what happened between clouds and data centers. For a long time, the tech folks that ruled the decision to build or control your own data center is what was going on. And obviously that eventually gave way to developers using clouds and adopting clouds and doing that on their own. And now we don't think twice about starting a company. You don't start a company going like, I need to build a data center. So no, nobody's doing that. So the same thing is happening in data. We for the last 10, 12, 20 years have been going like, oh, let's focus on the technology of the data stack. Let's get big data. And by the way, big data is like for maybe 5% of the companies out there. Everything else is just data, and just being able to run the drills that they want to run outside without having to talk about ETLs, reverse ETLs, stuff like that. So this notion of being able to have a data fabric emerge that runs my business is where I think there's the parting advice I want to give is understand data fabrics, understand where they're going. Gartner and others have written a lot about what data fabrics need to be. Now, for the last few years, data fabrics have been a concept of how to do things, but with companies like Syncari emerging and codifying those concepts into an actual platform, we're starting to see that more of what we're doing is going to be adopted by a lot of folks. So don't get shy with data. Every business leader will eventually be able to run some portion of the data that they control in their environment, but stop focusing on the technologies and start focusing on the strategic advantages that your business gets from the data that you have, and start using that data in order to grow your business, and as opposed to some of the other things that we think about sometimes with the tech.
That's fantastic. Nick, thank you so much for taking the time, sharing your expertise. Thank you so much for being a sponsor for MartechDay. And yeah, looking forward to better data and marketing ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, Scott. It's really great to get finally reconnected, and I appreciate the time.
All right, have a good day. Bye.
Take care. Bye.